Likutei Sichos, Chelech Abdalad, Volume 24, the third Sicha for Parshas Devarim. We're only going to study the Sicha until chapter 8, not the entirety of the Sicha, and I highly encourage you to study the rest of the Sicha inside as it discusses and further elaborates on some of the concepts that are discussed in the first part of the Sicha. The Sicha will explain the greatness of the Ever HaYarden. Ever HaYarden is the other side of the Jordan River, which the two tribes, Gad and Reuven, requested as their part of Eretz Yisrael, and it's mentioned in this week's Parsha. Also, it will translate it into levels of Avodas Hashem. As a quick introduction to help us better flow through the Sicha, the concept of Bitul. Bitul means literally self-nullification or subservience, which is an ultimate prerequisite and objective of our Avodas Hashem. But within Bitul, there are two types of Bitul, as discussed at length in many, many different places in Chassidus. There is Bitul Hayesh, which means you nullify or you subserviate your own Yesh. However, the Yesh means that the person is, quote-unquote, still in existence. And then there is Bitul B'Metzias, which means total and absolute self-nullification or self-Bitul, which means that there is no B'Metzias, that the person, so to speak, is not an entity in themselves, totally bottled to godliness. Another thing to familiarize ourselves with, everything that's mentioned in the Torah, whether it is a conquest of land, whether it is a description of a particular ingredient that is necessary for, let's say, the avodah in the Beis HaMikdash, for the service in the Beis HaMikdash, it needs to be understood in the literal physical sense. Meaning when, for example, the Torah describes the oil that needs to be used for the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash, obviously, it's talking about literally the oil as in a physical sense, what oil is coming from the olive and the quality of it and so on. However, as we can obviously understand, there is something behind it. What stands behind it is the spiritual depth of it, the spiritual implication or the esoterical meaning of it, which really is the ultimate in the description of the Torah of that particular thing. Another thing to familiarize ourselves with, the famous story that happened with the Tzemach Tzedek. When a Chassid came to the Tzemach Tzedek to ask his permission to emigrate to Eretz Yisrael, and he explained that he wants to enjoy spiritually the greatness, the holiness of Eretz Yisrael, the Tzemach Tzedek said to him, Mach do Eretz Yisrael. Literally translated, make here Eretz Yisrael. In other words, take the place which you live now and convert it into the spiritual holiness of Eretz Yisrael. So let's get into the Sicha. In our Parsha, it describes how the Bnei Yisrael defeated Oig Melech HaBashan and conquered his land. If you look in chapter 3, Psukim 3 and 4, it describes over there exactly what they conquered, and it concludes with the words Kol Chevel Argoiv Mamleches Oig Babashan, that they conquered the entire district of Argoiv, which was the seat of the kingdom of Oig in the Bashan. Now, in connection to this word Chevel Argoiv, in other words, to this place, the quote, the district of Argoiv, we find two different ideas, and both of them indicate the greatness and importance of the place. Rashi explains, what does it mean, Argoiv? What is this Chevel Argoiv? So he says, Argoiv means Paltin, a palace. This is like the seat of the crown. This is the Heichal HaMelech. This is where the palace of the king was. This entire district was named after the fact that it was the seat of the kingship. This is in Rashi. However, in the Mishnah, in Maseches Menachos, if you look in Gemara Menachos on Daf Pei Hey Amud Beis 85b, it says over there it describes the various ingredients that were used for the Beis HaMikdash, the oils, the flowers, the wine, and so on. And in relation to the oil, it says The Tana Kama in the Mishnah, the first Tana says, Takua or Takoya, it was the primary place from where they took the oils. Meaning, that was the source of the oils, as it's the best and most quality oil, and that's why they took it from there. However, Abba Shaul says, Abba Shaul is another Tanaic sage, he says, Shniyala, second to it, meaning, of course, the Koya is the alpha, as it says in the Mishnah, is the primary source. However, second to it, another place is Regev, which is Be'ever HaYarden, in the other side of the Yarden. Now, the Rebbe's father, the Tzaddik Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, in the Likutei Levi Yitzchak explains that what is this place Regev? This is the Chevel Argoiv, which is mentioned in our Parsha. This is Chevel Argoiv, which was part of the inheritance, the land of Menashe, which is on the other side of the Yarden, as it says in our Parsha, in Parshas Devarim. And actually, he adds something very interesting, that this helps explain. It says in Pasuk Yudalid in verse 14 that Yair ben Menashe took the entire Chevel HaArgoiv. He took the entire district of Argoiv. So he says that it's very apropos, because Yair means oil, light. And since light comes from oil, and this is the place where they had this oil, so we see the connection. Now, as we know, everything in the Torah is very, very precise. And therefore, when you have two different concepts, two different ideas, or sometimes even two different translations on the very same thing, they must be connected in idea, in concept. So the Rebbe says we'll understand this by taking a closer look at that Mishnah in which Abba Shaul uses the expression, he doesn't say the oil is also good, or it's also an option, but rather he says Shniyala, second to it is Regev, which is in the other side of the Yarden. And from the basic translation, it comes out, if you look at the words, that what really is the essence of the machlokes, what is really the essence of the debate, not if the oil is good or not, but since he makes a point to mention, he points out that it's shniyala, that it's second to it, that it seems that that is the essence of the machlokes. In other words, do you consider it a second to it or not? Now, the question that could be asked is a very obvious one. We know that you can't really have a machlokes in mitzias. Mitzias means in fact, in reality. Is it second to it in quality or is it not? In other words, what are they arguing about? Check the oil and see if it's second in quality or not. So obviously this brings us to the conclusion that it's not a question, it's not a debate in the matter of whether it is qualitative oil or not, close to or similar to the main source of oil, which isn't a koya, but rather the emphasis over here is that since it comes from Ever HaYarden, the other side of the Yarden, this is the key of the machlokes. According to the Tana Kama, according to the first initial sage in the Mishnah, because it's from, quote, the other side of the Yarden, therefore it cannot be second to it in importance, in stature. It cannot be. However, according to Abba Shaul, Adarabba, on the contrary, this is the novelty, that notwithstanding the fact that it's not in Eretz Yisrael proper, rather it's from Ever HaYarden, yet it could be, quote, Shniyala, it could be second to it, second at least in level to Eretz Yisrael. What is the explanation of this? In other words, how will we understand it? How do we make sense of this? So the Rebbe says we'll understand it according to a Chassidic insight in the whole idea over here, the whole concept. Shemen, oil, typically is a remez for bittul. How does shemen amount to bittul? So number one, in the literal sense, how do you derive oil from the olives? By crushing them, by squeezing the olives. That's a form of bittul. That's number one. Number two, the oil, how does it get consumed? It gets drawn through the wick, and then it gets burnt, and there's nothing left of it. That is the ultimate bittul. And also, number three, the manner in which it produces the light, this oil, is in a manner of chashoi, in silence. There are some fires that actually make a noise as they burn through. This is in a very silent manner, almost as if it doesn't exist, so to speak. That is the ultimate level of bittul. So this all totals up to bittul b'mitzius. Like I said, the ultimate level of bittul. Now, this type of bittul, the bittul b'mitzius, which, like we said, is the ultimate bittul, that it gets totally burnt away and there's nothing left, this cannot come through the avodah of the person himself. In other words, this cannot be initiated by the person. It cannot be accomplished by the person on his own accord. Rather, there's like a revelation that comes from above, a power milmaila from above that burns the oil, similar to what happens with the oil itself. It's not that the oil itself creates its own bittul, but rather it's the fire that burns it that makes it bottle. And this basically means that to reach the ultimate level of bittul b'mitzias, this is only by a revelation that comes from above. Of course, understanding that in order for a person to fully actualize that bittul, he also needs to do something on his part, so to speak. There has to be an avodah that comes from him that makes him a kli, a receptacle for this bittul. But the actual bittul comes from the revelation from above. And according to this, we'll understand the difference between Eretz Yisrael proper and the Eiver HaYarden, the other side of the Yarden. Eretz Yisrael is the land of the 7 nations that from the very beginning was chosen by Hashem, and He gave it to our ancestors. He gave it to the Avos, to our holy Avos, as an inheritance. In other words, it came from Hashem. Hashem made the Kedusha there. However, on the other side of the Yarden, the Eiver HaYarden, it wasn't really a designated holy place to begin with. Rather, by means of their request or demand that they merit to settle down there, then it was given from above. Hashem gave them the ability to also incorporate it into Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, there's a big difference, a fundamental difference between the holiness, therefore the bittul of Eretz Yisrael, to the other side of the Yarden. The Kedusha, the holiness of Eretz Yisrael, as it says in the Pasuk, that this is a land that Tomid Einei Hashem Elkecha, but constantly the eyes of Hashem are there. What does that indicate? That it's constant, it comes from Hashem. It's not dependent, it's not contingent on the avodah of the person, of the people. However, the other side of the Yarden came as a result of their avodah, of their request. And now we can appreciate the machloikis between the debate between the Tanna Kama and Abba Shaul. The Tanna Kama holds that the choicest oil could only come from Eretz Yisrael. Why? Because over there in Eretz Yisrael, as we just explained, that's where godliness shines in a revealed manner. To the extent that there is re'iyah, vision, as it says in the Pasuk, Einei Hashem Elkecha, the eyes, which that represents vision, which is the ultimate revelation of godliness, and therefore this is a place which is absolutely fit and compatible with the idea of bittul b'mitzias. However, on the other side of the Yarden, since that ultimately the revelation that's there didn't come on its own from Hashem, but it came through their demand, through their request, therefore it doesn't have the same level of revelation as it is in Eretz Yisrael, and therefore you cannot use the oil from Regev, or even if you can use it, you cannot consider it second to that. It's not second in line to that, it's in a totally different category. It's not in the same status, so to speak, of the oil of Eretz Yisrael. However, on the other hand, Abba Shaul holds that although true, indeed, the trigger for the revelation in Eiver HaYarden, in the other side of the Yarden, came from them, from the people. However, he holds that Hashem gave such a great, intense revelation there into the place, which is very similar in stature, very similar in concept to the revelation that there is in Eretz Yisrael on its own, already from Hashem from before. And therefore he holds that yes, it could be considered as Shniela, it could be considered as second in line to it, albeit not the same itself. meaning it's almost like the revelation, the light that shines in Eretz Yisrael, and therefore he calls it Shniyala Regev Be'ever Hayarden. This is the difference between Chutz La'aretz and Ever Yarden. Meaning, indeed, even in Chutz La'aretz, as we shared in the story in the introduction to the Sicha, Machta Eretz Yisrael, a Yid has the obligation and the privilege to try to inject Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael, even in Chutz La'aretz. However, since the revelation is accomplished through the Avodah Sa'adam, the Avodah of the person, therefore the revelation is somewhat limited because it's in accordance with the abilities, the capability of the person, and therefore it's limited by design, by nature. However, in the Ever HaYarden, holds Abishol, in the other side of the Yarden, although the actual trigger for it, the initiation, so to speak, came through their request, but the revelation that Hashem gave is not a revelation that is tailored according to the abilities of mankind, according to abilities of the Avodah Sa'adam, but rather it came as a revelation from above. And since it came from above, therefore he holds that there is also a bitul b'mitzias, albeit since it came from somewhat from them, so it's not the ultimate bitul b'mitzias as is in Eretz Yisrael. And therefore it's only shniyala, it's only secondary. Now we can understand the connection between these two concepts, these two ideas, in the words Chevel Argoiv, the district of Argoiv. Remember Rashi's explanation and that which comes out as we just explained from the Mishnah. You see, when Jews conquer a place, when they conquer a land, it's not just that they conquer it in the physical, literal sense, that now it's under the ownership of Yidden. But mainly, meaning also, but perhaps you can say even mainly, that this is a spiritual conquest. That is really the ultimate in Bnei Yisrael, in Jews conquering a land. And here too, when they conquered Chevel Argoiv, when they conquered the district of Argoiv, which is the Paltin Shel Melech, this is the place of the palace of the king, the seat of the crown. So this now was converted from being the seat of the crown for a Melech Basar Vadam, for a king, a flesh and blood, a regular literal king, and in this case not even a Jewish king. This converted it, this switched it over to becoming the Paltin, so to speak, the seat of the crown for the ultimate king, the Malkei Shel Olam, the king of the universe, HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. And therefore, this Argoiv, this place, this palace of the king, that now, after their conquest, after their request and their conquest, is now the palace, the seat of the crown of the king of the world. It also has a similar in level, similar in stature, in holiness to that of Eretz Yisrael, which is, of course, by essence of its nature, as we said before, the Paltin of the king, the palace of the king, the seat of the crown of the king of the world. And because of this, therefore, its oil is also Shayach, also has a compatibility to the ultimate inyan of Bittul, because the place itself became now a place of Hashem. Therefore, its oil, which oil, again, like we said before, represents the idea of Bittul, is also the ultimate Bittul, which is very similar to the Bittul of Eretz Yisrael, Bittul b'Metzias.